Good evening and welcome to NewSpace Chicago. I'm Dave Hurst, founder and executive director of NewSpace Chicago. And we are a nonprofit organization devoted to the development of the new space industry in Chicago and space entrepreneurship in Chicago. So I'm glad to see so many people turned out tonight. How many of you are here for the first time? Wow, so I'm glad to see you newbies here, that's great. And I'm also happy to see so many returning people. Really happy to have you here. NewSpace Chicago is focused on encouraging and nurturing the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Chicago for the space industry. You might ask, what space industry? That's why we're here, because we're trying to create that. And we believe that Chicago is actually well positioned to become a player in the space industry. If you think, a lot of people think about the space industry and they go, oh, well, Florida, Texas, Southern California, why Chicago? Well, if you look at those, you're talking about one of three things. It's either the launch industry, okay, that's the Space Coast in Florida, or you're talking about the sort of legacy geosynchronous communication satellite industry, okay, that's Southern California. Or you're talking about sort of the defense aerospace industry, and that's in a lot of places. But there's a lot more to entrepreneurial space, and Chicago is well positioned to support that. We have a highly trained technical workforce. We have world-class universities and research institutions. We're a national transportation hub. We are a global financial center, and we're a vibrant manufacturing community. So we have all of the pieces to make a space industry happen. We don't need to be a launch site. There are lots of other things that can happen here. I like to think about manufacturing in space as being something that could happen here. But there are plenty of different things that could happen. So we're trying to encourage that and make that happen. Let's see, a couple of announcements. First of all, a shout out to our sponsors. MHub is this wonderful space that we are in. We appreciate them giving us the space. MHub is a manufacturing innovation center and a startup incubator. So there are tremendous facilities here for creating products out of atoms as opposed to software out of electrons. And so it's a great place to create a startup and to actually build things. You can think of this as a maker space for entrepreneurs. Our second sponsor is Metropolitan Brewing, and they're responsible for the lovely beer that we've been drinking this evening. And our third sponsor is Orbital Transports, which is my company. And somebody told me that because we've been sponsoring NewSpace Chicago, I should put our logo on the list here, so there it is. And Orbital Transports is a space logistics provider. We deliver small satellite missions for people who have an interest in access to space or space data, but maybe it's not their primary business model. So people who want to get to space, but they don't know what they're doing. This year, we are starting a new program. We want to find sponsors to support this organization so that we can continue to bring you the amazing programming that we've been doing, and hopefully provide new speakers and additional interesting topics. And so we're defining a couple of different levels for sponsors. Basically, you can be an event sponsor and sponsor a single event, and in that case, you get these useful benefits. And otherwise, you can be a premier sponsor and sponsor us for the entire year. Oops. And so if you know of a company that might be interested in sponsoring the space industry in Chicago, or sponsoring entrepreneurship in Chicago, or they just think space is cool, let me know, or let some of our other people who are on our board know as well, and we'd love to talk to them. So this evening, we have a very interesting program for you. Matt Voss is VP of Business Development for NearSpace Launch. And I love it when we can find space companies who are in the Midwest. So when I talk about NewSpace Chicago is sponsoring or encouraging the space ecosystem in Chicago and the Chicagoland area. I'll be expansive about that and include Northeast Indiana as well. But we really want to develop that ecosystem. So Matt Voss is going to tell us about the journey that NearSpace Launch has had in creating products for the small satellite and CubeSat industry, and how they have developed their entrepreneurial story. So without further ado, I'd like to bring you Matt Voss.
Cool, be official with this thing. So I'll just give a quick introduction. So the whole story is basically, we're going to be talking about our systems, 400 systems and subsystems in orbit over the past 5 years. So just kind of telling our journey, how that happened and how we got to there, being based out of Northeast Indiana and how it came about. So just give you a quick overview about NSL, our standard systems and products. I did show and tell here for you guys, so it's always fun. These are a lot of our systems that we make. CubeSats that we develop and have from radios. We started out as a comm systems and black boxes, and then also ThinSats. So I'll kind of walk you through how we've developed each system through the last 5 years, coming from our radios, really is where it started, which was a disruptive technology that then helped us go into the rest of this market. So just to give you a quick overview of the growth of the industry, that has also helped us in our ability to be in the market this last 5-10 years. First of all, we have, just thinking about the overall market real quick, we've got our GEO, MEO, and LEO. So majority of the small satellite market is in the LEO. That's the majority of our work. We've done some deep space work as well, but when it comes to the small satellite industry, that's really growing. A lot of the other industry growth is happening. You hear about is in our LEO. This is just showing how many have launched over the past couple of 10 years here. You can just see this steady growth curve that we have going on. And we've been able to enjoy a little bit of that growth curve, the total NSL CubeSat growth. This is kind of showing you a quick depiction of the market of our 3Us. Is definitely the primary thing that's been launching. Green has been launched, not launched, but manifested in blue. So I find these kind of slides interesting when you get an overview of the big market picture. There's definitely other things not recorded here or shown, which are a little bit larger in size. But a lot of the STEM and basic industry ones are being flown in this region here. So going to the comm, where NSL started. So the standard method for communication devices with a satellite is basically you have your satellite here, and it finds a ground station that it talks to somewhere here on Earth. That usually takes 8 to 12 hours in orbit to connect to it. It has some great downlinks to those ground stations. But where does NSL kind of come in is when we partnered with Globalstar. Globalstar is a $3 billion satellite network with 40 satellites in orbit currently. So if you're working with Globalstar, usually it's an asset tracker, or when you're out hiking in a remote region, they can help find you, search and rescue. So they rescue about 2 people per day. So if you're out hiking a mountain and you press the button, they'll find you with their satellite constellation. And so what we did 5 years ago with Taylor University, a small campus, had a CubeSat program. And they were able to work with Globalstar directly and find that they could connect to their constellation on high altitude balloons. And so they had launched 400 balloons, a well-established program for that, and had tested that. And then from there, had gone to actually wanted to do a launch. So they applied for a CubeSat with one of the programs, and then got that launched and showed that it was actually connecting to the Globalstar system while in orbit. This gave a lot of advantages for a comm system. Instead of pointing down to a single ground station and talking every 8 hours or 12 hours, you're able to talk to your constellation 24/7. So it gave a lot more access to space. And so right here, you can see this is Globalstar's normal terrestrial coverage when you're actually on Earth. Here when you're working with their radios. But when you're in orbit, you get a lot wider spread of connectivity because we're actually above the atmosphere. We're connecting and we're turning our satellites towards their 40 satellites in orbit already. There's a lot of groups trying to launch constellations to make these kind of options for connectivity to 24/7, but we just kind of used a constellation that was already there. And so from that, NSL was born to kind of start making these radios and improving on them over the years. So here's our architecture, basically. Here's your normal CubeSat right here, kind of thing that's in orbit, and then pointing at our EyeStar radios will be on the outside with its transmitter. It'll talk to one of the Globalstar satellites, goes to one of the Globalstar ground stations, which is 21 of them around the world, and then it comes through our secure server system, and then to an online console. So still when we're at our conferences or different locations, we're showing live data of your satellite sitting on the table. Usually people don't believe it's live. They think it can only happen every certain amount of time, unless they have a ton of ground stations. So this was really a disruptive technology, and has allowed us to really bring it on board. So this is one of our particle detectors, one of the first missions there with the Air Force that we did, and it was an experimental test. And this is particle data that we were able to detect with our, throughout the atmosphere. So at first, when we first launched these, we did not have the polar regions, but with the lineage of 100 EyeStars that we've flown, we've been able to now get actually full polar coverage with the Globalstar satellite system. So now we can actually get coverage over the ocean, the polar regions, which is not really done with those radio systems. So that's our EyeStar radios. This is our simplex up here that we have developed, and then also our duplex, which is allowed for commanding, but needs a little bit of stabilization. One of the also neat factors with the radio that we've been able to have is because we're connecting directly to the actual system in orbit. We can have an RPM that has up to 12 or higher now with a spin rate with our satellites. So a lot of times we have a 60% success rate in the industry with satellites when they go in orbit. And so with our CubeSats, we are actually at 100% right now with a lot of our most of our connectivity mission success. So for all of our DoD and industry projects, we have connected to all of them. Even when they have a tumble rate with our simplex, we're able to still connect because we're actually looking up really closely to other Globalstar satellites. So it's a big advantage to our network. So that's kind of, from that EyeStar, a couple other products have been developed in systems to use that. The duplex, though, requires a little more stable platform with an attitude control system, so we're not spinning as much, 4th RPM, but that gets you up and down, down. So some of the highlights that we've had that I've already shared is that we've had 100% mission success for a lot of our 10 CubeSats. We've had 100 EyeStar radios flown already, and then we've had manifested 300 systems here in this 2020 to be launched. So that's been a neat process here. I just want to share quickly about some of our launches that we've had, some of the CubeSats, I should say. So we've had about 10 total. TSAT was the one that we had as our first test mission. From that, we did some with the Air Force research labs. Some of our cruise missions to continue to do some Globalstar testing in orbit to kind of prove out the factor. And then we did Shark. That was just, we were part of that. Ascardia one, we made that. NearSpace, we worked with the university. Some of these were university ones that we launched. This was actually a middle school. We helped to make the first one in Florida with them. So we did a lot of STEM work as well, which has been a big passion of our business model. Both of our founders were professors before they stepped into launching the commercial system. We also have then FSAT, and then we launched 60 ThinSats as well, with 60 different payloads in schools or universities with a lot of diverse payload experience. So that was a really neat project there. And then we had MakerSat and BPM recently with some of the radios. So I just kind of listed a few highlights and different missions there. I thought it would be fun to kind of go a little bit deeper. I don't know if you guys heard of Ascardia. It's actually a space station. It's developed from a billionaire that is working within the UN. And they were really excited about bringing together a nation of people, citizens of orbit, because they saw that orbit was the space region was going to get occupied by nations. And so their whole hope and desire was to, and still is, and they're still working on it all, is to kind of bring citizenship to the outside of space, and so they asked us in partnership with NanoRacks and who work with the ISS, International Space Station, to build their first satellite, which would record a lot of the citizens or uplinking your data to that. So they've started using it as a congregate, so they use our duplex to kind of uplink different citizens. And so it has some interesting things. So we're following them and seeing how that's going. And it was called the Asgardian mission, so it was a kind of unique, fun mission to do, 3D CubeSat. Most recently, in the last 2 weeks, we were on the first Space Force mission there with some of our comm systems. And also we did the first 3D printed satellite, MakerSat 1. That was interesting to watch that because of the whole heat issues they have with using plastics for their 3D printing. So both of those were just our comm systems that we were used on there. But it was fun to be a part of those missions and kind of learn what was going on as much as we could for some of it. But we also have then the ThinSat constellation that was launched in April. Planetarium was a big part of that as one of the missions, as well as some other groups here in the Midwest launching their satellites. So it was a collaboration with Virginia Space, Twig Space Labs, and NearSpace Launch, and then the 60 different groups who made their payloads. And it was a really neat mission as far as out there, where we were able to launch those this past April. So we were able to basically each person made their own ThinSat, and I can actually show you guys this and afterwards. Feel free. This is the actual size of the ThinSat here. It's called a PicoSat. We actually have our EyeStar radio in it, battery, UPS. So this is one of the smallest satellites that you have out there that was completely authorized to use, working with the 18th Squadron who tracks all space debris and all the different issues there. And so this was a really neat mission for allowing Bob Twiggs, who was the co-inventor of the CubeSat. So him and another gentleman helped actually make and design the standard of all the small sat industry for the CubeSat industry. So he was really passionate. He worked at Stanford, wanted to get people educated on satellites. How can we make this happen? And go about doing that. And so he brought together Virginia Space and NearSpace Launch and said, how can we keep these in orbit while doing STEM? Because these are getting really expensive to launch and put up in orbit and just not feasible for first-time entry. And so basically we took the CubeSat, and there was a look at doing pocket cubes at first, which was even a smaller version of these guys. They're just basically take this and shrink it to here, but they were used to make special launchers. All the systems wouldn't really fit in there. And so then NSL was able to think about how can we cut this up like sliced bread, basically, and make a loaf out of it. And each one of those will be an individual satellite. And from that, and it has a lot of advantages because it can be all robotically made, manufacturing. So try to do that Midwest manufacturing there for you. And it was, our small team was able to do 100 of these individual satellites that were able to spread out. So we made 100 of those pocket or ThinSats, and it's really helped lower the cost, obviously, by each one of those. And each school was able to implement a whole process of building their own payload, testing on a high altitude balloon, to get some further testing, going through a data dashboard, and then at last get actually go in orbit and test their data in the very low Earth orbit. So it was actually a very short mission of, it can be down from 10 to 3 days, but study a part of the atmosphere that no one ever really studies for that short, the very low Earth orbit, which is actually a lot of the atmosphere is within that needs to be studied. Because usually it's cost prohibitive to have these big, expensive satellites in that region. So if we can lower the cost and we can do multi-point studies, we can actually do some really cool data studies in the low Earth orbit. So the students here, a lot of them came for the launch here, happened in April. We had hundreds of people there, and it was really neat to have 52 of them turn on within the first hour of the launch. And so we continue to develop the system here, and we're going to be launching another constellation here, hopefully this October, and have another iteration of the ThinSats, along with further development of each of the payloads and how they work and get them together. So this is a really neat way to kind of engage universities, high school students into the STEM efforts of ThinSats. So we've actually developed from that. We also have really an area that NSL has been kind of growing in is rapid development of satellites. So our first satellite, we were actually able to make this CubeSat in less than 50 days to actually connect to it. So rapid development of a CubeSat usually takes 2 years or to a year at least to kind of go from concept to actually building it. And so our hope is to kind of really speed up the process and the time frame of getting a satellite in orbit. So what we have here is one that we have developed right here that's sitting on the table, this small little guy. But we're looking at making it larger and putting it into a 6U. So here's your 6U. Let's go ahead and start slicing up bigger ones here. Still fits in the launchers of a standard system. So this is a standard CubeSat as well. And we can still do manufacturing and scale it. So we can do that for 27Us and larger devices here. And we have people really interested in some of these constellations in the future here. So those can go outside of STEM as well for our new practice of how we make our own satellites. And because each one of these take a lot more custom building to actually integrate and attach parts, we can robotically do a lot of these things as it scales. So the ThinSat is a really neat design that could have a lot of manufacturing possibilities, and we'll see how that turns out in the next year or two. There's it being on the vibe table, being environmental tested before we launched it. So yeah, if you guys have questions, I'll be glad to talk about that more. So this is us actually robotically assembling it here. This is just some examples of how it has helped us aerodynamic. It's a great push for new technology. So instead of spending a lot of money to send up a whole CubeSat to test your technology, if you just want to test a PC-104, which is a standard size, or some basic thing, you can put your payload in there, get your space system tested, and a fraction of the cost compared to trying to launch your entire CubeSat to test your one little system to prove that it works in orbit. So there's a lot of importance to get TRL9 to your systems, so high level. And we can also get them in really quick turnarounds, and then conforms to standard 6U or different launcher sizes. So yeah, so that's kind of the ThinSat. It's a really neat and new system that's out there and being used. This is some of our manifested 2020 launches that we have going on. So we have an industry group in Virginia, or on the East Coast, Benchmark, that wants to test out their propulsion system, the DFAST. It's a really neat green biochemical that can be launched. So we're helping them launch their first propulsion system and working with them. We have the other constellation that's going to be launched. We're in naval research labs, and then we're also doing another gears launch of our own with Globalstar to kind of test out some more equipment here in the future. And then we have a lot of other subsystems and manifested for this year as well. So we'll see how they all launch, or if they stay on schedule, but they're all supposed to launch this year. So that's kind of a quick taste of what we have coming down the pipeline. The last system I wanted to share about that kind of grew out of the ThinSat program, which we're really excited about, is dealing with the space debris problem. That is kind of growing as we're putting more constellations in orbit. If you track, if you're seeing what's going on there, it's really becoming a problem for astronomy. It's becoming a problem for other collision possibilities. So we have the 18th Squadron that's been tracking a lot of that. Currently, we're using radar to really try to see what's going on. They have to use large swaths to kind of estimate if something's going to collide. You probably saw that in the news. They thought something could collide, but these satellites could still be very far apart because we're using radar instead of asset tracking. And if you remember before, that's really what Globalstar does, is asset tracking of different, from ships to devices around the world. So we have an SBIR with the Air Force, with the 18th Squadron and Air Force Research Labs, to convert basically the ThinSat and make it into a pico satellite where you can attach this to every CubeSat or other small satellite, and have this on the exterior so you can have a Globalstar radio and actually have an individual satellite. So this is a small, took us a lot to really make a satellite this small, and still have the technology as a beacon, basically, to let you know where you're at. So you can attach this pretty much like this guy here on the outside of your CubeSat or a larger satellite and know where it is, and they can be exported to any catalog of a tracker or anything of that nature. So these black boxes are kind of a big movement of trying to get actually tracking in space. So we're excited about this device here. It has a lot of capability and possibilities. So we'll see how that's going to work as well. It's not only, though, is it going to help people with their tracking, but also mission assurance. So I mentioned before, 60% of industry, it's around 40% for education institutions for them to actually be able to communicate with their satellites. So these have 100% connectivity for all of our industry and DoD partners. And so if we can manufacture those, we can automatically almost guarantee that every satellite will be dead when they go into orbit. You can at least get your temperature, your health and safety, usually when they die in orbit, people don't know why. They kind of have to go back through and say, guess why, what's wrong, or it's not fully a guess, it's, where do we have fault and have an estimation of problem. And they're trying to ensure things in space and satellites. And so at least if we have one of these black boxes, you can actually know what's going on with your satellite. And kind of say, okay, maybe it has a low power problem or something, so we can actually diagnose it. The other advantage it brings to a lot of satellites now that we're excited about is it's going to let you be connected to your satellite 24/7 instead of when you go over and have that be downlink. So these are low data links, data downlinks, so it won't be the primary comm system unless it's a low data need mission. So we'll kind of work in tandem with the more strong data downlinks ground stations while also doing the simplex here. So anyways, that's kind of our last part there. I mean, you can have a camera, you can have a power protector, plasma GPS, it can be plugged into it, temperature sensors. So it's a pretty neat system that we're kind of working on right now on our research side. We had flown already a black box like this structure from one of our customers who had asked for it. And so we're converting that basically and one of our ThinSats into one of those guys. So trying to make it smaller and smaller, kind of like a smartphone there. So we're in Indiana, so we work a simple location there really, so we don't have this large facility. We're working out of an apartment basement there kind of area, and so we've taken over 3 locations, and it's pretty humble abode there. We're doing our different offices, and we're a small team as well, but it's been a really neat. We have our clean room here that has flight assembly and inventory control, along with our manufacturing machine shop and secondary clean room. So we have a whole machine shop in this area here and our mid location. So we kind of broke up our different parts. We're very lean as well, so the cost of operations is very nice for us as well. So we can enter the market pretty easily as well. So, but we do follow all the standards as far as 300-hour burn-in, the ISO 9000 control systems, and then we have the heritage already. So even though we have remote locations, we're able to still follow those standard procedures for DoD needs. So basically the last thing that we're really talking about a lot is that we're really devoted to STEM right now. That's our new hope, is to launch a actual nonprofit this year to kind of continue to develop and focus on that. So we've been doing that naturally with our ThinSats program and high altitude balloons. We're also working with a program that's going to the moon, Team Miles, where we're making actual particle detectors for them and doing some studies for that. So that's going to be neat when that's going to be going up to the moon, orbiting and kicking off towards Mars. And so that was a STEM work project with NASA. So there's a lot of STEM side that we see as the future of this, where we see that we'd love to see another generation and group jump into the space satellite industry. I think we're poised well here in the Midwest to kind of jump into it and making that barrier a lot less hard to get into. And that's where we're doing that at a university. That's where NSL came out of. So we do have a lot of great universities around here that can jump into the space industry and work businesses as its own. So the nice thing is you can start pretty lean in the industry and work your way in. So yeah. So that's about it. Thank you.
So, I'd like to open it up for questions, and I'll start with one question, which is that you say that all of your systems have operated on orbit. Space is hard, so what do you attribute your success rate to?
Yeah, so a lot of the success, I think, is that integration is always one of the parts that's really hard. So both of our founders have 70 years of experience, so I don't want to miss that. Working either at Lockheed or in the comm industry. So they have done a lot of this for testing. They had been doing CubeSats for a long time within the university, so they were familiar with a lot of systems and subsystems and network. But I think the integration testing of that they're doing a lot of the different parts themselves. So if you're going to work with different partners, you just got to really understand your partners well to make sure it stays successful. And then I think just continue to do simple designs and making sure that those interface well. So that's part of it, I think. Other than that, there's always more to it, but I think overall it's a strong integration plan for each of those.
Great. Do we have other questions?
So obviously, the commercial space industry is really just getting started now. But as you mentioned before, space debris is already like a major concern. So do you foresee like a regulatory bottleneck that's being caused by just like the sheer number of satellites being launched, or have you built that in your business model at all?
So yeah, so that's a good question. Just how can we continue to get things in orbit as more regulations are being added, and even the 5-10 years that there has been a lot more added in, and they're trying to figure out how can we handle this big increase in space. It's going to be a multiply effect, and so currently we actually use a consultant to handle a lot of that with us. Before it was just a one-page document you turned it in, and you could, for at least our comm system, now it requires a little bit more processing. So I think there will be, that is actually, we say there's 3 parts to the leg, and that's definitely one of them is that can stop you from getting in orbit is regulations. So making sure you have a plan and a budget to work through that process to get everything that you need in orbit to get you there. So we're working with someone that has done it before and walk alongside them to help you get to orbit. So.
Related to that question, what are your thoughts on requiring
companies that want to launch to include kind of an assessment on the impact that their satellites will have both on the debris aspects, end-of-life contingencies, and then with respect to Starlink, of course, there's a big debate on, as you even mentioned in the beginning, the effect on astronomical concerns in the dark sky. There's some people that suggest that environmental assessments should be included with those factors. Do you think that that's a burden for the companies, or do you think that's something that's manageable?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's definitely some that's already in place from ODARs to making sure that we can, all of our systems will burn up on re-entry, be responsible in that way. I think it definitely, we need to have an easy but effective system that will prohibit the growth of this industry right now. So if we overregulate right now, we can kill something before it gets going too strong. We definitely want to keep the industry interested in what we're doing in space, and the more people that come in will help all of us, I think, as we grow an economy in space. So that's the part the government has a tough hand in. How can we manage this all in orbit while staying sustainable at the same time? So I don't know if I can, it's above my pay grade, but I'm going to defer that. But I will say that there will need to be something to help regulate us. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't go too much more, because there's a whole industry being created now just to help with the regulation side of the aspect of getting you in orbit. So I think as more systems are being, is realizing this is a problem, there's going to be creativity of how can we create instruments that will allow us to, we were talking about a laser that could possibly knock down earlier, knock down the satellite. There's a lot of people doing creative ideas of how can we fix this problem. So the government recognizes the problem, the industry recognizes it, so the goal is, the race is on, is can we help give some guidance that will be feasible for everyone to follow, like a black box put on your part there. So yeah, everyone's trying to, they see this as how can we help get this, some sort of system in orbit so we don't have to deal with it. Sorry if I can't be more clear than that. So it is a big question everyone's asking.
Thank you.
Where do you see the next market opportunity is after small sats and black boxes?
Yeah, for NSL, or is it industry across?
Industry-wide.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's going to be I'm hoping that it'll continue to grow in orbit. So a lot of management systems, people that will help facilitate, it's going to be a need. And I think there's a lot of, I think more capabilities are going to come out of this, the software development, cybersecurity. I think there's going to be more nations getting involved in orbit. I think there's going to be a lot more international growth in the market. So being able to communicate and work across borders to get your stuff in orbit is going to be a part of that. I found that to be a lot more coming on to NearSpace Launch and others is the international work, which I think is important to work with a partner, and how does that share space. So that'll be interesting. So I don't know if that really answers, and it's it's evolving quickly. It's hard to know exactly what direction we're going to go with everything.
Well then, for NSL specifically.
NSL specifically.
Yeah. No. So for NSL, yeah, we definitely see our point is really helping with rapidly getting people into orbit and helping. I think we found that a niche of how to really get people in orbit and keep them connected while in orbit. The other part I mentioned at the end would be STEM, kind of helping educate and bring people into space and get them through some of those initial barriers that would be hard to get in orbit. We're partnering with Orbital Transports here as well to help work with them as they help others to bring on into orbit. So we really want to partner with groups and collaborate in the space environment. So that's why I was excited to be here, is hear what people are doing and trying to do. So I think the more people in space exploring and understanding what's out there is what we'd like to be a part of. So.
Thank you.
So for NSL specifically, you had mentioned DoD being a really big customer for you guys in terms of trying to you had mentioned DoD being a pretty big customer for you guys in terms of trying different types of technology, as well as a lot of schools more around the STEM aspect. I guess what other industry sectors have you seen be really major NSL utilizers, be it from the radio standpoint or at the actual satellite bus standpoint? Like, is it Earth observation? Is it marine
From
traffic?
the industry standpoint, kind of thing. So the third part there, yeah. So a lot of our conferences will have, definitely the student focus, the government, and the industry. So industry, where we fit in a lot of times, is helping people get in orbit first time for the industry. So that's been a big partnership. But yeah, the industry could be doing a lot of different things. They could be building their own comm systems, their own networks. A lot of people have a lot of different goals, propulsion systems, so they want to service one subsystem of the network out there for government and other industry. So there's a lot of whatever you can think of that can be in orbit. A lot of the investors, and we were talking before the meeting here, the government used to represent the majority share of the space market. Now it's only 20% Space Force was sharing. So they're really, the government's really looking to the industry. That's where a lot of the investors are at. And it's growing rapidly in the new space area. So I think a lot of the large corporate companies are taking a fresh look to space and saying, how can we commercialize space and use it for different assets? So obviously SpaceX, Amazon, all these groups are seeing a lot of commercial opportunity from those. And then the small satellites, there's a lot of niches that you can find within that always as well, or do manufacturing, which will let you continue to play with those larger companies as well. That answers a little bit. It's a pretty broad area there, though.
Can you speak more on the manufacturing of the black boxes? So like, how long does it take to manufacture each unit, and how are you limited on how many you can make? And what's the limit on that, if you could?
So it has a lot of capabilities there. So right now we're just saying we can do 50 a month with our first projections, but we can speed that up as we manufacture and refine our system. That'll be with a little bit of assembly from one of our engineers, but mostly methodically for most of the boards that we have to do now. So just 50 a month at the moment, which should sustain. We can do a couple constellations pretty quickly in that way. So that's usually, currently we're getting a heritage of 4 of them this year. We already have a heritage of the other box. All the subsystems of it have TRL9, which means it's already been in orbit and tested. And it's proven it can handle radiation testing and those kind of things. So the black box is actually, I didn't share this here, but the ThinSat iteration is currently looking like this, which is really neat, but it gives a limited amount of payload space. As you can see, this is one of our ThinSat frames. This is the actual payload area. So what this ThinSat version only works with a CSD launcher. So we now have made it converted into a universal launcher where you can actually take this black box, which we really devised through our grant with the Air Force, and we've actually implemented and have inserted it into the payload of the ThinSat. And so now this entire backside has a whole open area for a lot larger payload size. So PC-140 boards and other larger boards can be tested within this. It's almost doubling the size of your payload area for testing. Plus also being universal in what launchers it can be working with. So it's a pretty exciting development where we're using that technology that has a lot more space capacity with the black box and integrating that with the ThinSats. So that will be part of the manufacturing process, because the ThinSats need to be manufactured as well.
So you've mentioned that you've had, what, 100% success rate in space so far?
Yeah.
And congratulations on that. And what have been some of the limitations, since the facility that you work in is essentially, you showed us pictures of a house, garage.
Yeah, and actually it's kind of neat if you go to small. So I was just at the Small Sat Symposium in California. There's several of the larger groups that are known are working out of homes. A lot of Apple started there as well, but like we're fine just working out of the home locations, keeping lean as much as possible. Is always a healthy business model, and so we could move out of there if we needed to, but we've actually decided to stay within those forms for our factors. As long as you have a clean room that follows this industry standards of what you need, have the facility space, that's where you need to be really following the DoD guidelines, I guess. So the nice thing is, I think this satellite industry grew out of California, and they've had a lot of, they're used to seeing small businesses grow out of unique locations or accelerators, or like come up here and be fine with, you know, them being, as long as they can prove the standards and environmental testing. You go through the actual testing process. So hopefully that helps.
So this is kind of a follow-on question to that, which actually thank you for the lead-in. What is it going to take for companies like yours, small sat, nanosat companies, to get to the next level? Is it investment capital? Is it regulatory change? Is it market awareness? What's needed to get you out of your garage? Because you're in the garage right now, and everyone wants to go from the garage to become Hewlett-Packard. So
Right.
what's it going to take?
Yeah, kind of thing. So I think each business has to decide that for themselves, of course, and founders and what they want. Our group of engineers are very happy where they're working at the moment, but I think to move the next step, I mean, if we wanted to move out of the garage, it's not very hard, because being in Indiana, it's very low cost, so it's not a hard factor for us to do. I think to grow to a couple more engineers would require us to chase after a few more projects, and we're just doing organic growth. There's the investor method. We were talking about this before with some of you guys. You can go with the investor method, which works well and accelerates your growth, and you can bring on a team, and you can do a lot of cool things with that. I would say a majority of the space industry has gone that route. You can do it through grants through the government, and they will definitely fund a lot of you quickly doing your R&D side. And then you can do bootstrap as well, where you kind of fund yourself and grow it. So we've done mostly so far, all for the first 3-4 years was all self-funded through just doing it within the home and doing it, growing it that way naturally, and getting the heritage and proving the fact that it works. And then we've slowly bringing on new capital, currently through larger grants with the government. So it's made my job really easy as the business development guy, which I say it that way. But I will say that, yeah, investors, you have to find the right partner, I think, for us, and just find the people that would really fit our DNA and ethos of what we're trying to do. And I think making sure I see an investor as more of a partner in what we're trying to do. And that's just takes time to build that relationship, I think. So, but yeah, there's plenty of other small businesses. We work with 80 other ones, another accelerator, and I would say majority of them are using investors, which was great. So hopefully that answers a little bit for us at least.
So, I mean, without exposing any industry secrets, is there anything different about the circuitry and the components that you use to make them fit for space?
So yeah, there's definitely parts that are pretty straightforward. That's industry standards and open. That's some STEM parts, and then there's parts that have IP to it that has come with the experience of 70 years of working, especially with our radios. And so that's the part that we definitely have worked on. I think the overall, it's a simple design. It's our chief engineer has worked in a lot of different circuit boards and just a lot of work, and he's seen things that work and don't work. And I think experience is his primary sauce to making these things work. And I think the more you can test and try things out, get that experience even terrestrially. So he transferred from working within the comm system here and moving that over. So continue to get the experience, I think, would be his recommendation coming from him, I've heard him say. So try to get us try different things out.
questions?
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it a lot. And, if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to show you this stuff.
Thanks to Matt. I really appreciate the presentation and some insights into the small satellite industry in northern Indiana. Really appreciate it. So we have some more time available in the space, so I really look forward to continuing the conversation this evening. We will convene again next month, second Tuesday, and I'm not remembering what the date is, but second Tuesday of March. I look forward to seeing you all here again. Matt brought some demonstration items here, so you might want to take a closer look at those as well. Thank you all for coming this evening.